1863. Honolulu. The Kingdom of Hawaii was facing a national medical crisis. Following the unexpected death of their beloved young king, his brother, an iron-fisted ruler, Kapawaiwa, takes the throne and executes a 100-year law of exile. Houses were torched, families torn apart, and the sick hunted down and discarded, not to be cured, but to wait for their death. 50 years into this chaos, a 23-year-old woman arrives to break this century-old curse. But as people begin to heal, her name and her genius were suddenly erased from history. This is the story of a plague that brought a kingdom to its knees, and the woman who found a cure only to be scrubbed from the books of history. This is the story of Alice Augusta Ball. So, what was this crisis that brought a nation to its knees? And, intriguingly, why was the woman who saved it erased from history? Now, before the cure was found, there was the curse. And to understand the weight of what was stolen, we have to go back. The year is 1866. The people of Hawaii are facing a crisis that could mean life or death. A national medical crisis. All of a sudden, people's skin started to fall off. Noses and fingers began to crumble. Some have their eyes clouded by a creeping blindness. You see, for hundreds of years, Hawaiians had been living on these islands all by themselves. Until, on the fateful day of January 20th, 1778, Captain James Cook landed on the shores of Waimea. And on that day, his arrival carries not only new faith in technology, but also something sinister: the 1,000-year-old creditor, the lion's disease, or most commonly known as leprosy. For decades, as outsiders were gradually introduced into the islands, the disease slowly crept into a population who had zero immunity. It didn't just spread, it feasted. Now, 80 years after this first outside contact, King Kapawaiwa, who had recently succeeded his deceased brother, had no choice. Thousands of his citizens are dying. He issued a law, the Act to Prevent the Spread of Leprosy, a 100-year law of isolation, commanding all people suspected of leprosy to be thrown into the peninsula of Molokai. It was a devastating act. Houses were burned. Family members hid under floorboards, in caves, or forests just to escape. Whether you had it, or were even remotely suspected of having it, you were arrested and taken to the island of the living dead. The island where they were to live until the disease took over their body. The leper colony of Kalaupapa. This peninsula might fool you, as it looks like a paradise, but it is not. It is a biological prison. The north, west, and east are locked by violent, shark-infested waves. And the south is guarded by 1,200-meter sea cliffs, the highest on the planet. You can try to escape, but you will meet the jagged rocks long before you meet the horizon. Now, while they are sent there to die, all hope is not lost. Yes, leprosy might be new to the islanders, but it is ancient to the old world. There is a treatment, and this miracle treatment can be found in a tree, the chaulmoogra tree. In 1854, Dr. Frederick J. Maud published a paper observing people in India using the oil from its fruits for topical skin disease and noticing its curative effects. The oil contains chaulmoogric and hypoxanthinic acid, active compounds capable of inhibiting the growth of Mycobacterium leprae, the bacteria causing leprosy. News of this miracle oil reached the islands like a thunderclap. The king was relieved. The families were hopeful again. The nightmare of Molokai was finally going to end. Hawaii had found its savior. Or, so they thought. You see, chaulmoogra oil wasn't a gift from heaven. It was a deal with the devil himself. Sure, the oil has the capability to stop the progression of leprosy, but the problem lay in its delivery. Simply put, the human body can't easily absorb it. First, if you ingest it, its acrid acidity will lead to agonizing projectile vomiting. Second, if you inject it under the skin, it turns into a cold, hard sludge that burns like liquid fire. And worse, sometimes, these injections can lead to severe infections, requiring limb amputation. In short, the cure was there, but its acrid acidity and thickness were roadblocks for the human body to absorb. The world had its treatment, but it was locked inside a vault, with no keys to open it. Now, We jump 50 years forward. 1915. Honolulu, Hawaii. The setting is Kalaupapa Hospital. The law of isolation is still in full effect, and the leper colony in Molokai is more crowded than ever. Dr. Harry Holman, a man dedicated to the study of leprosy, has hit a wall. He knows that chaulmoogra oil is the answer, but he cannot solve the sludge problem. He saw some patients improve using it, but the results were too inconsistent. While scouring academic papers for a fresh perspective, he encounters a thesis tackling the isolation of chemical properties of a plant. It isn't from a seasoned medical veteran or a known researcher. It is from a young graduate student at the College of Hawaii, and her name, Alice Augusta Ball. So, who is this woman, and what skills did she have that intrigued Dr. Holman? Alice Ball was a 22-year-old chemist from Seattle, Washington. She was a prodigy who had already earned 2 degrees from the University of Washington, pharmaceutical chemistry and pharmacy. Holman personally approaches Alice to assist him with the chaulmoogra oil problem. Alice did not hesitate. She takes the challenge and begins to tear the chaulmoogra oil apart, atom by atom. You see, the problem with chaulmoogra oil was its fatty acids. They were too large, too heavy, and too stubborn to dissolve in the blood. To fix it, Alice used a process called esterification. Imagine the raw oil is a heavy, tangled chain that can't attach to the human body. Alice used alcohol and an acid catalyst to reshape the link of that chain. By adding an ethyl group to the fatty acids, she transformed them into ethyl esters, thus making it biologically absorbable. After months of grueling lab work, she had successfully transformed the viscous chaulmoogra into a clear, water-soluble, injectable cure. The vault was finally open. Now that the research was done, it was time to test whether the fruits of her labor were truly effective. Thus, in the later months of 1916, Dr. Holman began the injections at Kalaupapa Hospital, and the results were undeniable. For the first time in 50 years, patients were being discharged, not to their graves, but to their homes. But then, tragedy hits, and the air turns yellow. While Alice was giving a lecture to a group of students, in a freak laboratory accident, she accidentally inhaled chlorine gas. This wasn't just any gas, this was the same chemical weapon being used by the Germans during World War I to melt the lungs of their enemies. Alice was rushed back to her family in Seattle, her body failing. On December 31, 1916, at the young age of 24 years old, Alice Augusta Ball died. She died before she could publish her paper, before the gates of Molokai opened, before she could hear the gratitude of the family she had brought back together, before the world could know she had saved it. Now, with Alice gone, the work was too important to stop. The then head of the chemistry department, who would later become the president of the College of Hawaii, Arthur L. Dean, continued the research. He added 2 more steps into Alice's process: vacuum distillation and a final filtration, steps that were meant to further purify the oil and reduce the stinging pain of the injection. And then, in a twisted event, in 1920, a paper authored by J.T. MacDonald, the director of leprosy research at Kalaupapa Hospital, was published by the Journal of the American Medical Association, detailing the breakthrough that finally halted the progression of leprosy. In this paper, the ethyl ester was called the Dean derivative, and later on, which will be popularized, the process to transform it, the Dean method, crediting Arthur Dean as its maker. And in those pages, the name Alice Ball didn't exist. She wasn't an author nor a contributor. She wasn't even a footnote. In the years that followed, the Dean derivative was shipped across the world, reaching as far as South Africa and Venezuela. The name Dean method became a household name for scientists and doctors all around the world. Yes, the people of Kalaupapa and the world itself were healing. But it was healing on a lie. Now, you might be asking, what happened to Alice's story? Is this the end? Dr. Holman, the man who had watched Alice work, couldn't stay silent. In 1922, he published a paper titled The Fatty Acids of Chaulmoogra Oil, and in it, he didn't mince words. He wrote, "I cannot see that there is any improvement whatsoever over the original technique as worked out by Miss Ball." For Holman, the additional steps by Dean were minor refinements. The esterification by Alice was the heart of the discovery. For 2 decades, chaulmoogra oil was the standard treatment for patients with leprosy around the world until the arrival of sulfone drugs in 1940s. But the name Dean method still remains in the books, while Alice's still a ghost. 1977. 7 years after the lifting of the law of isolation, a scholar at the University of Hawaii, Dr. Catherine Takara, stumbled upon research papers and a forgotten name: Alice Augusta Ball. Finally, the tide turned. In 2000, the University of Hawaii placed a bronze plaque at the base of the only chaulmoogra tree on campus, honoring the woman who had been invisible for nearly a century. And then, in 2022, the governor of Hawaii officially declared February 24th as Alice Ball Day. The vault wasn't just open, the world finally knew who had forged the key. The Ball method was born. Alice Ball saved the lives of thousands. And today, the world finally knows her name. That is it, the mystery of Alice Ball. The story of how a life taken too early still found a way to shift the fate of thousands. Though her name was buried under the gathering dust of mountains of books, her work survived through a century to reveal a truth that brilliance cannot be erased. A truth that even when history turns its back, the world eventually remembers. This file is closed, for now, but not forgotten. Thank you for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you want to investigate some more curiosities, subscribe, so we can unfold more stories and unravel the mysterious, the bizarre, and the untold.